to seminary. So it's good to be back in Mobile. Right now I'm stationed in Montgomery at St. Bede Parish in Montgomery, Alabama. There's some that made the journey. Thank you guys for being here with us today. But I think it's quite appropriate that we kind of have our last speakers come here and speak to you guys about vocations. Because that's what this whole conference, that's what we're all kind of trying to point to, right? We all came here to listen to great speakers from around the country to help us to get closer to Jesus Christ, to help us to get closer to God. And part of getting closer to God is listening to what He wants us to do in life, trying to find out what our call is. And that's exactly what the vocation is. It's answering that call that Jesus gives each and every one of us and continues to sustain us in. So today we've assembled a super team of sorts to come and speak to us about vocation. Each one of us represents a different type of vocation. Mine is obvious. I represent the vocation to the priesthood. We also have Kara Davis here, who is a postulant for the Daughters of Charity. She represents the religious vocation. Mr. Justin Costanza here is a married man, so he'll represent the married life. And then I have Coach Joe Ahrensberg. We also know him as Dad. So my dad's here to speak about, he's also married, obviously, and he has children, and he has one who is a priest. So and he has a couple who are married. So he's gonna try to kind of wrap it all up and give his agely wisdom to speak about raising a family in vocation. Yeah, I just said that, and he's right there. So he has one who's a priest, he has a couple who are married. And, quite honestly, I was thinking about a religious vocation for a time. I was in Hawaii doing a family reunion and a wedding, and I had told the Archbishop that I wanted a 3-month exploratory missionary experience, so I could just see if it's needed over in Hawaii. So I've asked the Archbishop. I think he still needs some time getting back to me, but I think maybe I have a chance of doing that. But anyway, I am a priest, and my priestly vocation just didn't arrive overnight. It took some time, took some years for me to actually answer that call. And I'll tell you the one thing, if there's a young man in here thinking about a priestly vocation, but really it applies to any vocation that one might have, the one thing that you must start doing, the one thing that is very necessary to vocation, is that you begin to live intentionally. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, I mean, just quite frankly, you can't float through life. You have to be thinking about the decisions that you make, how those decisions impact you on a small level and on a great level. What are the things that you are doing? Are they getting you closer to God, or are they moving you further away from God? That's what I'm talking about, living intentionally. It's such a necessary ingredient if one is to ever find out what their vocation is. They must decide to live intentionally, to know what their decisions are leading them to. Now, I have a funny story. When I had first decided, okay, I think I'm called to be a priest, I think I'm gonna go ahead and declare myself a seminarian. I didn't really know how the process worked. I just figured you said I'm gonna study for priesthood, you inform one of the priests, and then you're kind of in. So I was kind of going around saying, yeah, I think I'm gonna go to seminary, I'm gonna do that. At the time, I was helping out McGill's football team, just doing their film work, just kind of doing whatever they needed me to do. And the coach there, Coach Steve Savarese, he calls me into his office one day, and he says, Pat, I think I've been hearing that you're thinking about going into seminary. I said, yeah, Coach, I think I am. At that time, I had decided to go into seminary, but you wouldn't really know it if you had a conversation with me, unless I told you. And he said, well, Pat, I don't think you're ready for that. I was kind of taken aback. Here, I think you tell someone they're going to study to be a priest, they should all be giving you high fives, especially if they're Catholic. So Coach Sav says, I just don't see it in your life. Like today, that day he called me in, it was a holy day of obligation. He said, did you go to Mass today? You planning to go to Mass? I was like, well, I guess I could. That's what I'm talking about. Are you ready to be a seminarian? do you really want to be a priest? Because you're not living it. See, that little conversation, it woke me up. Because he was dead on. I wasn't living intentionally. Yeah, I said I wanted to be a seminarian, said I wanted to study to be a priest, but it was all just in a superficial level. I needed to grow deeper. From that time on, started to pray more. From that time on, I started to go to Mass every day. All it took was that little conversation. And see, that's the thing that can happen for you, family members. Maybe it's that little conversation you have with that man who's thinking about being a seminarian, thinking he might have a call to the priesthood. It might take that little conversation. You never know how great of an impact those little encounters can have. But you too must be living intentionally, right? You too must be seeing that that man might have a vocation. My son, my nephew, that stranger who always seems to be coming to daily Mass. You have to be aware of how you're living your life and calling people to live that same Christian life. But as you see, we have 4 people here. I've spoken quite enough, so I'm going to turn it over to Miss Kara Davis, and she's going to continue sort of this path of vocation, explaining her very own vocation as well.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to put it in there so I can use my hands. Thank you. Like I said, my name is Kara Davis, and I'm coming from New Orleans, Louisiana. But if you, yay, New Orleans. But unfortunately, I'm not really from there, so if you ask me what high school I went to, I don't really have an answer for you there. But I've been there for a year. Last year as a pre-postulant with the Daughters of Charity, and just like a month ago, I got the upgrade, and and it's like getting a new phone. No, not really. Thank you. Now I'm a postulant, and what that means is I live with the sisters, and I have a ministry, and I'm in formation, but I'm not a sister yet, so I'm just Kara. And God willing, in a year, I'll go to St. Louis for seminary and be a seminary sister. But like I said, I don't really have a hometown because I grew up in a military family. Anybody out there military? Military brats? All right. We were Air Force. My dad was in the Air Force. So we moved around a lot, so I don't really have a hometown. But anywhere from California, Virginia, Nebraska, yeah, and Japan. So that Nebraska, wow, this is great. But anyway, so when I was asked to share a bit of my vocation story, I'm still new at sharing that, and I'm still new at getting it short and sweet because I want to tell you all the details because they're fresh and exciting and it's on my heart, on my mind. But since this is, about family, one faith, one family, I decided to share the piece of my story that I feel is the source of my vocation and the reason that I feel called to be a sister. The source of my vocation is my desire for holiness. I desire to be whole. So I'm going to share my experience of growing in that understanding of my call to holiness and how my family played a very crucial part of that. So when I was in 2nd grade, we were living in Bellevue, Nebraska at Offutt Air Force Base. Yeah, okay. And I was in 2nd grade at St. Mary's Catholic School, and we were asked to write a report about a saint. And I can't tell you who I chose to write my report about, but I had a dilemma because I was reading about all these holy men and women, and we had our spelling test on homophones. And if you remember anything about homophones, you know that these words sound the same, they might look the same, but they have different meanings. And we talked about whole and whole. So you have H-O-L-E, which is a hole you dig in the ground, right? Then you have W-H-O-L-E, which is to be complete. And here I am, this young kid, and I'm, reading, and I'm like, these are holy men and women. They're not in a hole, they're whole, they're complete, they're like saints. I think that they should be spelled with a W. So I wrote my entire report, and I intentionally wrote about the Holy Spirit, W-H-O-L-E-Y, and these holy men and women, WHOLEY. And of course, my teacher circled every single misspelling, and she asked me to rewrite the report. And so I did without the W. But in my heart, I was like, this makes sense. Why aren't we doing it this way? Because I was that rebellious. You know, when you think of a rebellious child, you don't think about them correcting how to spell holiness. But I was that girl. That's my story. So, as a kid, I was already intrigued by my faith. But at the time, of course, I didn't know I was longing for holiness. I didn't know that I was longing to be whole. I mean, I was playing Barbies every weekend and listening to NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys, you know, like. But something about that I just remember. And now I sit back and I wonder, where did all that come from? And you know, when I asked my parents about it, they're like, oh, it was God. It was God, Kara. Because they're just so like that. They're just wonderful people. But I've decided that it was through them as my teachers of faith. They were my witnesses of what it means to be holy and to be loved. And it was through their love that I was introduced to God's love. So about my family, we were pretty typical. Mom, dad, 2 girls, 2 boys, and a dog. And every Sunday we went to church as a family, and we left the dog at home. And you know, my parents were super involved in the parish. You know, we were all altar servers, and we went to youth group and all that. But don't let me fool you. We also operated under what I call the donut doctrine. And what this means is if you could hold it together the entire Mass, I'm talking from the priest walking in and leaving without misbehaving, you could get a donut after Mass. Anybody else do that? Yes. And let me tell you, Our Father was the hardest part of Mass because we held hands at that time. And if you could make it through the Our Father without karate chopping your brother, you get a donut. So that's kind of the story of my family at Mass and what that was like. One of my brothers never got a donut. And I'll talk about him later. He's with the Dominican Friars. So, you never know. But even as a kid, you know, even if as a kid, I didn't know, you know, we were just showing up to get a donut, and that was my understanding of what Mass was. But my parents placed church as such a priority, and they taught me that just showing up is the first step. And if I can make it a priority to show up every Sunday, then God can work with that. So eventually I left my super Catholic household, and I went to college. I went to Eastern Illinois University, and I studied speech pathology. And I was there for 6 years, undergrad and master's program. And when I was first looking at colleges, I wanted to go to a Catholic university. I thought having the name Catholic was important because being Catholic was such an important part of my identity. But then I visited EIU and I saw their Newman Catholic Center and they had a bus. And I was like, whoa, they have a bus. That means they must do stuff. And so my mom's like, you know, Kara, do you want to go in and meet the priest and see the chapel? And I was like, no, Mom, they got a bus. I can work with this. And so, you know, 6 years later, you know, I was there the whole time and was super involved in the Newman community. Anything from going on retreats, leading pilgrimages, to the March for Life, being on the leadership team. We even put on a play about the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, and I got to be a daughter of charity. This is before the whole, like, serious discernment thing. But I had that cornet, and it was made out of paper clips, wire, and felt. It was so great. And then I met the real daughters, and I was like, oh dear. Oh, you don't want to see me, you know, a few years ago. But anyway, that, and I lived at a Catholic worker house for a year. I can go on and on and on about all those little encounters with our Lord that, you know, made me question about being a sister. But I'm gonna go back to my family, because that's really where it all started. Even though each of these experiences, I felt a piece of myself uniting with Christ and making me whole and helping me discover my own authentic self. But it was what happened at home with my parents and my sister and my brothers that really helped me to discern that, you know, we are made for love. We are all made for love, and how we live out that call is unique to ourselves and how God created us. So don't get me wrong, I dated all that, and but then I met with sisters, kind of both confusing for the boyfriend. And then I lived at the Catholic Worker House, and I encountered Christ in the face of the women and the children who lived there. And then I came to understand that God made me with a great capacity for love, and I felt that I was called to share that love as a consecrated woman, as a servant of the poor, and God willing, as a daughter of charity. So here's a message. I have a message for parents and for kids. And parents, remember, you are also kids. You are sons and daughters too, so you get double. Parents, pray with your kids and for your kids. I know you probably all do that, but I want to share my experience with that. As a kid, I knew my parents prayed, but I didn't know how much they prayed. And then I met my brother, and I was like, this is why you pray. But as an adult, now I have this relationship with my parents where, aside from the whole, hey, mom and dad, I want to be a sister, but before that, sharing their prayers with me and letting them know that they're praying for me, letting me know that they're praying for me. And my mom still she writes me little notes and puts a stamp on it and says, hey, Kara, I pray for you today. Hope you're having a good day. And I get that in the mail on a day where I really need it. Sure, she could text it or Facebook me or call me. Who does that? But she sends it in the mail. And that's just something little that my mom does that means a lot. That I know she's praying for me because she tells me. And another thing is pray with each other. Parents, mom and dad, pray with each other. I didn't think my dad prayed until I saw them together praying. And when I was home for a break a few years ago, I was looking for a pen or something. I went in their room, and I saw on either side of their bed, they had this book, and it said, Prayers for Vocations. And at that point, I was really seriously discerning being a sister. And I should also add that my brother, one of my brothers was finishing college seminary, and my other had just come out that he felt called to go to seminary. And here I see these books on the side of their bed, and I was like, what are you doing? You're praying for all of us to leave you. And later, I found out those prayers for vocations were all vocations, and for all people, Kara, it's not about you always, and everything. But anyway, I just think about that sometimes, about our family. 3 out of 4 of the kids feel called to a religious or a priestly vocation. How does that happen? What is that? This isn't our family. We were karate chopping in the pews at Mass. And for some reason, we feel called, and we're doing our best to answer that call. And so I pray about that, and I think about that. And I think about why. And my parents would say, well, it's God, Kara. It's God. And I'm like, yes. And they're right. But my parents, they were the ones who taught us how to pray. They were the ones who saturated us with their own love just to give us a piece of God's love and what that feels like. And I think that's the greatest gift that any parent can give their kids. And, the way I'm going, I'm not going to be a mom or a parent. But this weekend, this day, talking about the families just makes me want to go home to my parents and my family, and I'm getting emotional, and just say thank you. Thank you for that gift of love. Because with that kind of radical love in your life, it makes you think about how you're called to love. And, I asked God that one day. I was like, God, how did you make me to love? And I'm thinking, as a wife, as a mom, as a wife and a mom. And then after a while, it's like, did you make me to be a sister? Did you call me and create me for that vocation? And here I am, and I'm still praying about it. But anyway, so parents, if you struggle to make it through the Our Father with your kids at Mass, just think. One of them could be a Dominican novice, one could be a seminarian, and one could be a postulant. So there's hope. Keep praying. And finally, kids, sons and daughters. So that's like everybody. When I say kids, I just mean you have parents. Remember that you are beloved. You are the beloved sons and daughters of your parents and God. So be loved. Open your hearts to God's love and he's going to take it from there. So I'm going to say it again. Remember that you are beloved sons and daughters, and be loved. And that's holiness. That's what makes you whole. W-H-O-L-E.
That was really great. Thank you, Karen, for sharing that. Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Justin Costanza, who's actually a parishioner of mine. He goes to St. Bede. You know, him and his family will always hold a special place in my heart because Justin and his wife Meg and his son Vinny, they always have been sitting in the front row. And whenever I try to give a homily, Vinny starts yelling at me, and I have the duty of keeping it all together. So I'd just like to invite Meg to come sit in the front row, and Vinny to warm up his lungs, and Justin, it's payback time.
You're good over there. I don't know if that's nice. Hey guys, I'm Justin Costanza. I'm going to move this out of the way. Father, move the podium so you can see him. I'm just kidding. Vincent, if you don't talk the whole time, I'll give you a donut. I just learned that. I did. I've learned a lot today. I've learned just a ton being around you guys. We got to hear about the Bread of Life discourse. Some of the most amazing stuff that we can hear. I learned that if you can't spell, you can be a nun. I mean, it's super cool. Like, Vincent, stop crying, but you could be a friar too. So if it doesn't work out with the quiet thing, that was awesome, by the way. If I could just read a few things off of that. She doesn't know me, and I've poked at her a little bit, but I appreciate it. That was really awesome. I'm Justin Costanza. I'm from Montgomery. I sit in the front pew at St. Bede's with my family, who is here as well today. And I'm supposed to share that if you didn't get the call these guys got, then I think you're on my team. And our team's bigger, which is cool. You guys are doing great. You didn't know. You're the captain. But we have been called to do great things, and our vocation, whether I am here to talk about the vocation of marriage, or if I'm here to talk about, I'm also the youth minister at Holy Spirit, which that's confusing. It's another church in our city, but I help there with their youth as well, which I think we have a few of those guys here today. We're excited. Yeah, I told them to sit in the back and not talk. They came in anyways. And so I have what feels like tons of vocations. So what I want you to get out of what I have to share today is I hope that we are all empowered a little bit by just taking a little bit of a breath today. This is a neat thing. And we have gotten just a wide variety of information. I mean, I went to school for an hour. I mean, that guy with all the books is smart. He's so smart. You didn't put my book in the thing. Left doctor off the thing too, I noticed when you put my name in there. We heard so many cool things. Like, that was cool. And I got to sit there next to my dad, who's here. Oh, by the way, this panel is sponsored by Chappie's Deli in Montgomery, Alabama. And the Montgomery people are laughing, Mobile people are like, what? But we have been able to hear so many things. So what I want you to take away from today is just that we need to kind of bundle it all together so that we're actually good at what we do when we leave. Something that I feel when I'm at church sometimes is that I feel like the priest, not just this guy, but all of them, wherever I am, sometimes he's telling me things that I wish other people could hear. Have you ever been in Mass and you're like, oh my gosh, I can think of 10 people that need to be hearing this right now. Some of y'all are here right now, so I'm glad. But I forget that, maybe I need to listen to those things too. So what I'm asking you to do is both of those. I want you to hear not just what I've said, but what all of these folks have said all day today. And then also for you, that you get to be me when you leave. That's the truth, by the way. You get to look this good, and you get to leave. And you get to go tell everybody else what you learned today, okay? Everything from the Bread of Life to feed your kids donuts after Mass. And you said so much more than that, but it is something I am going to use. everything that you've heard, we need to go back out into the world. Let me tell you why I want you to do that. They told me to come talk about marriage, and my wife will tell you I'm the best husband ever, and I am perfect. That's why she's not talking today. And she knows that I'm so good. I'll tell you how good my wife is to me. I asked her last night, like 10:30, right before I texted him, and said, hey, I wonder what I'm supposed to wear tomorrow. She said, just ask Father Pat what he's wearing. She didn't laugh. I think that's, you know you love each other when you talk to each other that way. And that's Vincent screaming, I know it. But literally, my vocation as being married to her, my vocation being married is really a vocation of evangelism as well, which is one of the 4 things we heard about today. And if you can take that away from this, then we've all done our job. But what I mean by that is, when I am married to her, when I am as part of my family, not just with my 2 kids, we also have a 7 or 8 week old in the back. She's much quieter. Her name's Natalie. She's beautiful right there. I really do think that's Vincent. I do love you. He probably wants to come up here. But when I am with my family, or when I am with my extended family at my mom and dad's, or if I'm standing up, I also teach high school math. So if you can imagine this, teaching math, you don't learn a whole lot. Just kidding, you actually learn a ton about math and life. So wherever I am, if I'm up in front of the youth at youth group, I have to remember every day that I'm not perfect at what I do. And it's not hard to remember that. I could have come today and given a serious talk about how I learned things the hard way in life. I could come and give you a serious talk about how I had to learn about public sin and how I had to learn about public forgiveness and redemption and learning from that and carrying your cross. I could do that too. I like this a lot better, but I am a very human person with very impressionable eyes and ears in front of me every day. And most of them are smaller people, up through high school, whether it's in math class or whatever it may be. But my real job, my real vocation is to share with them that I'm not perfect at what I do. I'm not the perfect husband. I'm not a perfect teacher. I'm not a perfect youth minister. But I'm going to do my best. I'm going to let them learn through me. I'm going to let Christ live inside of me so that they can see Christ in what I do well. And unfortunately, whether we like it or not, what we do wrong, what we don't do well. And that's tough, and it's super tough. And so my goal for you is that when you have to go be me today when you leave, is that you remember that I want you to go be that person to somebody. Whether you know it or not, or whether you like it or not, you are, and you will be. There are people watching you all the time. I'm as good a husband as I am right now, which I think is pretty good. Pretty awesome most of the time. I'm a great dad because I had an awesome dad. I have an awesome mom. She's here too. I don't know why I'm getting checked. I love you guys. Yeah, they're clapping for y'all. And it is just so awesome to get to do what I do every day because I know all I'm really doing is trying to be as good as they were to me. I'm going to try to be as good as they were to Vincent and to Natalie and the 4 more that we'll probably have that we don't know about yet. By the way, Megan, there's something I have to tell you. I'm pregnant. I told her I was going to lose 25 pounds this summer. Summer ends in November. Just in case you didn't know. Because we're not perfect, right? Your goal when you leave here is to go tell everybody what you learned today. And your goal is to remember that Vincent is watching you and that Megan is watching me be a husband to her and that our kids live the way that we live, whether we're praying out loud together, the best thing that you can possibly do with your kids, whether they see you pray together, whether they see you not do something. When I say a prayer at the beginning of my class, I always ask that God give us the grace to make good decisions during the day and that He will allow us to be, just this huge light of Christ in the things that we do and in what we don't do, in the things that we say and in what we don't say. Because it is so easy to do the wrong thing and to say the wrong thing that brings people down. And when you're in a position like mine, whether I like it or not, I've got people looking at me all the time. All it takes is doing that once. And I've destroyed a bond that they may have with another person, which ultimately is a bond that they have with Christ. And it's a bond that they can develop with Christ. And then I've taught them, not only have I destroyed that, but now I've taught them to go out there and to do it with other people. And that's tough. That's tough. We don't get it right all the time. Like I said, I can stand up here and talk about how we don't get it right. But I can also tell you for a fact how important it is that you surround yourself with people who can help build you up. And in my marriage, that's how we're successful. Every day is not the best day, I promise, okay? Every day is tough. Every day is hard. But to put Christ at the forefront of our relationship and to put Christ right in front for our kids to see as we develop and grow, then maybe we'll give them the best chance to develop that relationship so that when my kids are older, I'll have a Dominican friar, a postulate, a seminarian, and maybe somebody who's a math teacher and loves the Lord enough to share it with people. I appreciate being able to give the opportunity today to come share it with you. Again, what I want you to take away today, go be this guy to somebody else. Go make somebody else's day. Go, I'm not saying a major day, but go give Christ away to everyone you meet without even knowing you're doing it. And if you do that long enough, then the whole world can change. I know. I've watched it happen at school. I've watched it happen in my own family. I watch it happen every Wednesday night at Holy Spirit Catholic Church. Father watches it happen every Sunday from the front pew. So just remember that's what that is, by the way. Thank y'all for letting me be here with you today. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, Justin. I lost track of what he was saying. I was trying to think of a comeback to a short joke. I couldn't. I gotta text him later. I'll figure something out. Yeah, no, that's all right. All right, so our final speaker is going to be someone who, again, is very close to my heart. It's my dad. My dad has raised, I'm one of 7. So my dad has raised 7 kids. One of them has become a priest. And when you raise 7 kids, you're really good at cleaning up messes. And so we've kind of made a mess of all of our vocation talks. So Dad, you can come clean it up for me.
Thank you. I was going to stand, Pat, but you didn't bring my walker or my cane, so I have to sit here. Since I'm so old and enfeebled. I don't know why I volunteered for this, given him the mic. You know, I will start with a joke, but I'm going to be serious after that. When my son was ordained, I remember clearly the morning after the ordination, we went back to the house, and we were sitting on the couch together, and getting ready to go to the reception, and Pat turned to me and said, you know, Dad, now that I'm ordained, you can no longer strike me or you're excommunicated. So I want to let you know, Father Pat, I checked with Archbishop Rodi. He is a canon lawyer. He's not aware of any penalty, but he said if there is one, I am dispensed. So I would love to sit up here and tell you that this is a product of this, and that's not the case at all. I want to talk about really 3 things to kind of sum up what I think is important about vocations. I think that my son and my other children, who I hope are living holy lives, are living it sometimes in spite of me, not because of me. I would love to take the credit. My wife, who's sitting in the front row because she's too chicken to come up here and sit with me, is a huge part in any success we've had with our children. But I would counsel you this first. Every one of us has a vocation to sanctity. We are all called to be saints. And in living out that vocation to make it to heaven, which is really all that matters when all is said and done, in following that vocation, we should be able to discern what particular job or state of life God has for us. So my first piece of advice to you fellow parents is to strive for holiness. Be holy yourself. Be holy as a couple. I heard both of the other speakers talk about prayer. That's so important. You can't be holy without prayer. As the great saints say, he who does not pray cannot be saved. So prayer is important, personal prayer, and a striving for personal holiness. Secondly, and both speakers mentioned this, pray as a family. I think one of the things I miss in our house, and while my wife and I have a really large house in Midtown Mobile, it's really quiet at night. I mean, the 7 kids are all gone. Me and her and my dad, who's 82, and it's quiet. And what I miss most is not the noise. I miss getting together with my kids after dinner and praying the rosary together. I miss going in and telling them goodnight and praying with them and making sure they prayed in the morning and going to Sunday Mass. And I think that's important because your children have a vocation first and foremost to be saints. So foster that. Second in that vocation is love your wife, and wives love your husband, as St. Paul counsels us. Your domestic church, your relationship with your spouse, is the first place your children are going to see the vocation of gift of self played out in the way you treat your wife and the way she treats you. So be faithful to each other, be self-emptying to each other, and that's something your children need to see. It's so very important. Finally, and I'll be the briefest of all the speakers, you know, I got to go and hear my son give a talk about his vocation discernment. And I wanted to sit in the front because I was sure that he was going to get up there and say, man, my dad is so holy, you know, he just does all these wonderful things, and just watching him wanted me to become a priest. And he got up there and he talked about his interaction with Father Zogby when he was at St. Mary's and Father Steve Williams when he was at McGill-Tulin. And I realized that the third component, when you're talking about vocations to priestly and religious life, is that your children need to have interaction with priests, brothers, and sisters. So invite them into your home. Become intimate with them. They should know you. You should know them. They should know where you live. Your children should have experiences with them because that's what they need to see. They get to see the married vocation, hopefully lived out very well with you and your spouse. A lot of times what they don't see is what a priest's life is like. Is it just that exposure for 50 minutes on Sunday morning? Is that it? No, life is much richer, much fuller than that. I know Father Pat shared with me that it was in being with those other priests. You know, Father Zogby would take the altar servers from 6 a.m. Mass to get breakfast every Sunday. And by the way, inside tip, parents, if you've got a lot of kids like we did, go to 6 a.m. Mass. They don't give you any trouble. They're almost asleep most of the time. But my 4 sons would serve, and then after Mass, Father Zogby would take them to get something to eat. So they had that interaction with him. Archbishop Lipscomb, Archbishop Rhodey has been to our house. Other priests have been to our house. Father Pat and my other sons went on trips with Father Williams, you know, to ACYC and other things like that. And that interaction is so important. One of my great laments, because I teach at McGill-Tulin, I teach theology, is that we don't have more examples of women religious in Mobile. And we have 2 cloistered orders, but the girls in our diocese don't just get to see nuns on a regular basis. And I think that would help foster that vocation as well. So my last piece of advice would be to invite priests and religious into your home and let your children interact with them so that they can start thinking about their vocation. And finally, be generous with the gift of life. I have 7 children. They all have vocations to be saints. Most of them have vocations to be husbands and wives. One has a vocation to be a priest. But we are blessed that we have 7 children who have that opportunity. And pray with them on a daily basis and pray for them. I heard that said by both speakers. Pray for your children every day. Ask the harvest master to send more workers into the vineyard, and pray that maybe one of your children will be one of those that he selects for that lofty task. Thank you all so very, very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Dad, for that very sage advice there. So, again, I just want to reiterate what has already been said to you. There's no blueprint to making a priest. There's no blueprint to making a religious vocation, right? But there are things that you can do. You can first and foremost pray. Pray for vocations, for your own vocation, for the vocation of your children, for vocations of any person. Constantly pray for vocations. Make it a habit to do this regularly. Live intentionally, right? Going back to that, just live intentionally. Know what you're doing. Have focus to your life. And I will tell you this, and it's one thing that I think sometimes goes missing. You know, Pope Francis told us one of the very first things he says in his first encyclical is how risky Christianity is. I don't think we think about that. We don't make that connection enough. But brothers and sisters, Christianity is a risk. It's going to be the riskiest thing you do in your life, to identify as Christian, to live that Christian life every day. You'll be called a hypocrite. You could be called a bigot. You could be called any number of things. Take that risk. The risk is worth it. In that risk, you will begin to live intentionally, right? If you ever gone to a casino, not that I'm advocating going to casinos, but if you ever go, if you go put a bet on something, that's a risk. You don't just walk away from the table, or the chips fall where they may, right? No, you're focused in. And to see how that turns out. It could be the same thing when you declare yourself Christian in a public way. When you live that life every single day. When you get into that struggle that it is of trying to live what you preach, trying to be that witness to others. It's a risk, but it keeps you focused. And so I just encourage each and every one of you as you go from here, taking what you've learned, as Justin said, and sharing it with everyone else. Take that risk. Take that risk. Let it inform your life. Live intentionally, and then find your vocation. I thank each and every one of you for coming today and listening to us. Before I go, I do have to call out my mom. Thank you, Mom, for all that you've done. She's going to be embarrassed that I'm doing this, but I'm going back up to Montgomery tonight, so it doesn't matter. So thank you, Mom, for all you did. And of course, my dad, Justin, Kara, thank you for joining me on this panel. And thank you all, of course, for coming here today. We appreciate you, and we hope to see you back in the parishes, taking what you've learned from here and sharing it with those who couldn't be here today. Thank you very much.